What's going on, friends? Welcome back to another 6-1-indie showcase conversation. My name is Mike. Maybe you know that by now. Who knows? I'm very sleep deprived, along with Becca on the 6-1-indie side of things. Hello, Becca.
Hi, Mike.
How are you?
I'm good.
Today, we're joined by Trento, the madman, maybe Mr. Floridale Man himself, behind this lovely sandbox, chaotic wonder of a game, Floridale Man, the joy of chaos. Trento, hello.
Hey Mike, hey Becca, thanks for having me on here today.
Remember,
And
like
yes,
before
I am
we
the
started
Florida man.
recording. Remember before we started recording, I was like, probably gonna mess up that intro. I stumbled my way through that, but we're just gonna roll with it.
That's the way to go. I got no problems with that.
Hell yeah, Trento. The first question: who are you? Tell me about your game dev journey. What is Floridale Man?
Yeah, let's do it. Great, now it's my turn to bungle the intro.
Yeah.
So, like you
Nailed
said,
it.
my name's Trento. I am the production director slash CEO, which is still a wild thing to say, at Moldbreaker Interactive. I am the resident Florida man of the team, though I hesitate to say I'm the one behind it because that really goes to the entire rest of the team that does it. But my dev history, I realized today as I was thinking through this question, I was like, I started earlier than I thought I did because back maybe 7, 8 years ago, I
Okay.
worked as a localization editor, helping transcribe from Japanese to English for visual novels and like PSP fan translation games and stuff like that. NDA projects that I can't talk about. That's why it's not on my resume. It's fine.
We could talk about it later.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
Off air.
But I had a lot of fun doing that for a couple years. Just did that on the side while I was in college and just kind of dropped off the map after that. Didn't do it for a bit. But fast forward a few years, I'm a physics business student, absolutely hating my career, looking to get out of business and just never touch a financial report ever again. Spoiler, that didn't work out. And I'm talking to my partner, Sydney Ayers, now our creative director. And she tells me about this game jam thing she's doing. I'm like, what's that? Never heard of this before. She says how she's looking into doing a game design minor and how that there's all these different things and goes, wait, actually, didn't you used to do some game dev stuff? Why don't you try it? And I'm like, I have no skills. I just live in spreadsheets all day. I can't code or do art or do music. And she says, have you heard of a producer? And my world changed in one sentence. I dropped a lot of the classes I was doing. My teacher at the time was like, yeah, I sure did change this person's career from a real lucrative business one to game dev, and that's awesome. That's my success story. And just made games constantly in school for a couple years.
Nice. What were some of those projects that you made in school?
The one that stands out to me the most was Beat Skidball was a really fun little rhythm game we
Ooh.
did.
Okay.
It definitely can never be commercialized because boy, we sure did put in the Space Jam theme in there and a couple
Hell
other
yeah.
things.
I
But
don't know.
it
I
was
think
this
that's worth the
basketball
cease and
rhythm game.
desist.
So good, right? You know,
Honestly.
put it on Steam for like 5 cents. It's fine.
They're not using it anymore. It's fine.
No. Did that? Did Lost and Found Off, which was how I met a couple people on the team. Game Jam game 3 days. It was similar vibe to Florida Man. We just made weird items and just threw them in. There were Pokeballs, there were anchors, there were submarines. It was just whatever. And the whole shtick was based around, you know, that meme of, is this a bird? The
Yeah.
little anime screenshot. That was the pitch for that project.
Oh, incredible.
But left that, eventually graduated, got a job in LA working on, as a design producer, worked on some NDA internal PC games, some mobile ports, helped worked on release for the Switch port of It Takes Two.
Oh, nice.
And that brought us to last year, where devs went into a spiral because everything sucked. Everyone got laid off. Yeah. And that kind of hit a lot of sensitive spots for me and my team, where I was always very big on protecting my team being a core part of my production philosophy.
Sure.
I had a lot of friends who got laid off, as pretty much every dev will tell you. And I decided enough was enough. I didn't like how people were being treated. And I left my role and started working into, okay, how do I make a studio? what do we have to do? Looked into funding, interviewed people, pitched ideas, and this will get into a later question about how we came with Floridale Man, but we had that idea and wanted to run with it. And fast forward 7 months later, we formed Moldbreaker Interactive. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to make a change. We wanted to give people some beacon of hope in a really, really dark time in industry.
Yeah,
Long, rambly answer.
No, that's a beautiful answer. I commend you on that because I think it's more common on the indie side of things. This is kind of a common thread we've been having with a lot of these conversations about like the games industry in general is a tight knit family to some extent. Like, you know, before we started recording, we talked about PAXs and you know, going to these events and stuff, and it all feels like a big family reunion. The indie scene is so much tighter than that. Like, it's an actual like family reunion. It's always like big hugs, good vibes, everybody just trying to support one another. And I think that is very much carried over into the dev side of things. For the most part, obviously there's some bad eggs out there. But it sounds like that is rooted in your core philosophy of the studio, which is like, again, I commend you for that because it is vital, especially with how hopeless things have been feeling the past year and a half, or I guess 2 years. Well, really, it's only
Really,
amplified
it's been a
in the
bit.
past. But yeah, it's been a bit. It's amplified more in the past like year, 2 years. But yeah, I think more people need to really follow that lead, especially on the AAA side of things and AA side of things, and even in the major media side of things. Yeah. Well, let's talk about.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. Please continue.
I was like, thankfully, I think we're not the only studio who's spun up with that mentality. Like you said, you talked to a lot of people. It's at GDC this year, got a lot of similar reception and responses, and people like, yeah, I want to do that. And then a couple months later, they messaged me, hey, I did it. And they're starting their own thing. So now there's always more cake. The more people to do it, the better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like any job, it's horrifying taking that shot, but there's no better feeling knowing that shot paid off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, the studio really just started up somewhat recently. How long have you guys been working on Floridale Man?
So Floridale Man was a pet project for 3-4 years at this point.
Okay.
It spun up in a game jam, but was not the focus of the game jam. The question or idea that was pitched to me was a 3-line text. What if Goose Game, but Floridale Man? That was it. That was all that had to happen. Sid texted that to me, again, our creative director. I read that out to people at the game jam table. We did not work on our game jam game for 3 or 4 hours. We just talked about that and did nothing else. And then let it be for a couple weeks. Kept researching, kept coming up. And a couple years later, when I graduated and left to go work at my last job, we went, hey, what if we actually make this? And started doing things on the weekends, getting a group of friends together, 3-4 of us, just plodding away at paper prototypes, making an RPG to figure out, okay, if you were this type of Floridale Man, what would you do? Played a lot of one-shot D&D sessions. It was fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just sounds such like something we kind of always say like internally, and just like when we have like these conversations with folks, is that like indies are just so fucking punk rock, and that is like the most punk rock like process I've ever heard of. Just like, yeah, you sat down like on the weekends, pieces of paper, doing D&D sessions. Like, yeah, that's it, man.
Yeah,
that's so sick.
And it worked out really, really well. Like it gave us a lot of ideas that persisted to this day. Also, lost if it got thrown out.
Sure.
But I will never forget the fact that immediately one of our players, this is a spoiler for something that doesn't exist in a playable demo yet, but it's fine. Obligatory disclaimer. Who knows if this will be in the final game, but it is right now.
Scoop. I'm calling TMZ.
Yeah, right? Shit. Oh, well, there goes the everyone turn up right. It's my only swear. Immediately one of our players, one of our devs, decided to break everything that I had planned as the DM for that one shot and go, I'm going to break into Publix by digging through the sewer and come up in the toilet. He was not there for half of the session.
God, that's incredible. That's incredible. Well, what are so you obviously Publix for the uninitiated local food chain, grocery store, I should say, not food chain. It's a grocery store. Um, I'd imagine there are just like so many little winks and nods throughout this game,
Mhm.
paying
Uh,
homage, if you will.
yes. Um, Becca, whereabouts were you from Florida? I might have
I
missed
am
this, my bad.
from. I was like most of my life. I was like 40 minutes north of Orlando, so
Okay.
right around the theme park hotspot of the world of the state.
Gotcha. Well, we have been heavily advised by our legal team, hey, don't talk about the mouse.
Right.
So we have said, yeah, there's an area up to the north that we redacted. Has been one heavy pointer. We have nods to little bits of Key West, key lime pie, key lime ice cream has been popping up throughout.
Hmm.
Uh, I grew up in South Florida, so there's quite a few nods to Boca Raton, Miami, City Place areas. I've also traveled extensively to Central Florida because that's where I had a lot of friends. Um, there's nods to the Everglades. In one interview I did in the past, I talked about how, yep, there might just be a section of the horizon that's constantly on fire because they're always burning the Everglades. Um, it's a weird thing you grow up with there.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Uh, so you mentioned Mr. Capital M Mouse. This is a very weird question, but like, has the thought with I guess the Steamboat Willie version going into public domain, has the thought of like sneaking him in there come across your brain or desk, or you're just kind of
We're looking
avoiding it
at
to be totally safe?
we're looking at some souvenir shops that are dotting
Okay,
the beach that were like, maybe.
okay,
But we're gonna build out what we can there, and then be like, hey, lawyers, what are your
yeah,
thoughts before we publish this?
yeah. Because I think the last thing an indie studio needs is the big D putting the hammer down.
hmm There's some cease and desists that are worth testing. That may not be one of
That's
them.
true. Like Space Jam.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's so insane because it's so ingrained when you're growing up in Florida. It's just ingrained in you that
hmm
you're driving down the street and there's going to be, a capital D.
hmm
There's a souvenir shop there. You're seeing
hmm
like the big billboards that say like get tickets for the amusement park at like $35 a person. Like that's not
hmm
possible. There's no way that's possible.
hmm
It's just
hmm
it's so ingrained and it just seems incredibly impossible to avoid that bomb when creating
We're
something like this.
we're working on substituting it out for some other things that are might be commentary in some way, shape, or form. But
sure.
that might be where I have to hold it for a sec.
The rodent family
Uh,
is quite big in the animal kingdom. It's
Indeed,
a
it
lot.
is.
It's a lot to play with.
Thankfully, plastic flamingos are not part of that family.
Oh
So
hell yeah!
Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah.
that
Oh,
might
that's
be the
incredible.
hint.
There's a this is a tangent that has nothing to do with the game. Um,
Go for it.
Down the street from us, like maybe like down the street around the corner, there is a fully pink house, and I shit you not, there are at least 50 plastic flamingos spread across the yard.
That's incredible.
Next time I pass by that house, I will take a picture and drop it in the Discord.
Yes.
Oh, please do.
It
And
is incredible.
there that there is a plot thread that we're working out right now of flamingos just constantly popping up throughout the game as you progress through it. So that person may be the progenitor of some things.
Dude, flamingos are so dumb. They're the best.
Oh yeah, they're great.
So I don't think we explicitly said it, but so Floridale Man, like you kind of insinuated, entitled Goose Game like game, so like open world sandbox chaotic sort of ordeal. Seems like quite the ambitious, if you want to call it, genre to tackle for like the studio's debut title, and obviously your experience in previous studios, I'm sure helped. But what were some of the challenges that popped up throughout the development so far when trying to tackle this like wild concept and implement it into just a chaotic sandbox?
Oh, I will not deny that. Yeah, ooh. Uh, there's twofold answer to this. By all means, please cut me off if I ramble too much.
No, you go for it.
On one hand, I'm going to tackle the biz dev part because that's one of my hats. Um, trying to build the foundation for a healthy studio that is trying to make sure there's never crunch, or at least has resources planned for if you do have to crunch, that people can do 4-day work weeks and enjoy a good work-life balance, that they do what is on their job description, no more, no less, and are never asked to do things that they didn't sign up for. Building all the foundations for a long-term company that lasts beyond a couple of years. Doing all of that stuff while also building a project that we had to onboard a bunch of new people into to develop. Feels a lot like building and placing the train tracks while also building the train, but you are on a moving cart that makes the foundation of that train. Yeah, so it has been a struggle, especially the first 6 months while we were building a lot of our foundations, navigating the legal scene, navigating HR software, figuring out what things we need to do, because for some reason, a lot of places don't like to talk about their tools.
Sure.
Figuring out what skills we had to develop outside of just straight development, but looking into, okay, yeah, the management side, the software side, the enterprise software, what do we need to purchase and make sure we have functioning and up and running? Was made it kind of difficult for me to set up like the production side of things. And because a lot of us wore different hats, everyone would jump in and help out with things. Which I attribute to being the only reason we really made it through this for 6 months, is everyone was so happy to help with whatever thing was necessary. I had Catherine was helping out with production stuff for a few weeks while I was drowning in HR buildup. Our HR manager helped out with narrative stuff. Our character artist helped out with environment modeling, and just everyone really jumped in together and helped figure out how to cover other people while other people were building foundations they didn't know they needed to. The other part of that, and I'm now trying to remember what my twofold statement was. I remember now. Thankfully, a core part of our design helped a lot of the ambitious nature. We've already had to make some cuts. We had an entire 2 maps that we had talked about early on that have gotten removed.
Oh, wow.
Happens.
Yeah.
Better to cut down than keep building up later.
100%.
But thankfully, those maps, none of the work got lost because it got folded into what exists. We had a resort map because you can't have Florida without having big posh resorts on golf courses. That got merged into one of the existing maps that is not currently public. We had a place called Shoreline Drive, which was meant to replace or emulate rather the shop storefronts that line beaches, and the beach was going to be its own separate map. Those just got mushed together, so that way we didn't have to separate them out. And that was all possible because something that Sid worked with the design team early on was creating a very modular design, that things were self-contained, that they referenced other places, but if needed, the order could change around. We could put them in, we could mush them together, we could move characters around. The quests and items could be used in any map, just whatever we needed at the time. So that was a struggle when we came to, we had to make those calls to cut things, but it worked out because we had prepared that part ahead of time.
Yeah, essentially you sounded like you were kind of ahead of the game in terms of setting yourself up for success instead of hitting hurdles later on. Because like I'm sure like adding those additional maps, for example, especially when you're trying to maybe hit a milestone, starting to tie up development at some point, it just kind of leans into like using those resources that you have in place to help prevent crunch, put a little more stress on that.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you for the summary, my very wordy ramblings.
I am a robot. Obviously, with this concept of just chaotic Florida, is comedy. Comedy, I feel like, and this kind of a common sentiment going around. Comedy's hard to nail, but at least judging from what I've seen of the game and trailers, it seems like you guys are hitting all the right notes. How do you approach comedy in the game and ensure that you're kind of hitting all the right beats that you intend?
First off, thank you. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I also have I have a very particular sense of humor, and you guys are my humor.
That is excellent. I'm very glad to hear that. references have been a huge help. I'll say that right now. One of the ways we pitched the project to Catherine, especially our community manager, and a bunch of other people was, hey, what if JoJo both Florida Man and Goose Game? JoJo, a bizarre, well, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure anime. It's wonky physics, if you can call it that. Great show, highly recommend. Um, but we put a lot of effort up front to establishing pillars of the joy of chaos, and that those would be find, create, and destroy, and what that meant for the project as a whole. And honestly, the majority of those pillars became gifts of just things that we thought were funny, that exemplified each of those pillars. Uh, JoJo made a lot of appearances. Looney Tunes made a lot of appearances. Um, Bits of nostalgic humor and comedy in Scooby Doo and things that we thought exemplified what we were trying to do with Florida Man. Um, the second part of that was obviously playtesting, and like putting it in front of people as much as we could, or even playtesting internally. Um, it's hard to make a comedy game when you're one person. It's a lot less hard when you have 10 people who all have different points of view and different
Yeah.
comedic opinions. Um, yeah, like our tech director, Joseph Perino, writes a lot of the flavor text because he nails that stuff. Our HR manager turned narrative writer writes a lot of the dialogue, but also loops in Catherine, our community manager, to help write some characters that they just particularly resonate with. Like there is no one person in charge of the comedy because that just makes a very narrow perspective.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about that you kind of have to have multiple hands in the pot because not like my sense of humor doesn't click with many other people. Like for example, I think the most recent example was Thank Goodness You're Here, where like something I
Hmm.
completely adored totally worked for me, but I know like some other folks in the company, like they were like, it's not really my sense of humor, and it kind of felt like it dragged on for them. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that like there are multiple people working on the comedic beats.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm also curious what made you guys decide to go with something that was kind of 10 plus, like, it would be super easy to throw guns into the mix and like that kind of chaos. What made you guys
Hmm.
decide that you wanted to go with kind of this more lax, like super funny, like cutesy kind of story?
No, that's a great question. There's a tongue-in-cheek answer and then the real answer. Uh, the tongue-in-cheek one is there might be another game you've heard of that has guns and is based in Florida that comes out in the next year.
Oh, is it one that you mean the one that I referenced in the script of the main showcase? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which maybe want to try to differentiate a little bit from. I did text a couple of my friends who work there. I'm like, yo, you guys didn't tell me this. What's going on? But the real answer beyond that is we wanted to paint in some ways an idealized version of what Florida can be. Um, there's a aspect I think of Florida being the butt of a lot of jokes, which oftentimes can be very, very, very well deserved.
My
But there's
apologies,
also
Ari, the script.
no, you're fantastic. I don't think there's a flirting out there that will disagree in any way. Um,
You're all little freaks. I can't help it. It's just
We are.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Um, but there's also an aspect of, like we were saying before the recording, of just there is a part of Florida that Floridians know that we don't really tend to identify or think about until someone pokes us and goes, "Hey, yeah, what about blank? Like, why do you do it this way? Or are hurricane parties really a thing?" And I go, "Yeah, yeah." Uh, so there is a side of Florida that is very rarely portrayed, and that's something that we have seen as Floridians just came up to tables and showcases and go, "I'm so excited to see something based in Florida that isn't like, oh yeah, it's guns or it's some other thing or just not a
yeah.
favorable portrayal." Uh, so we wanted to show, hey, yeah, you can be who you are here. You can have the joy of chaos, whatever that means to you, and go out and create this weird cacophony, amalgamation of items that really make sense to only you and no one else, but it does make sense in its weird Florida man way, uh, and give that moment of levity to the world. because I think we all need that sometimes.
Amen.
My favorite thing to tell not Florida people about is Gator World.
Yeah.
Like that
I
was
have
a
no
field
context.
trip. That was a field trip.
Yep.
It's an actual amusement park that's all about alligators, and like there's
Yep.
literally like a show where they like dangle like a raw chicken above a alligator and have it like jump up and grab it, and it was like a kid field trip that everyone in Florida goes on at least once in their lives.
Yep. If you look up Gator World and you look up the statue, you'll see this um, artistic rendition of a gator head that is the entrance to one of the
Oh
buildings.
yeah,
And
I recognize that
yeah.
man from a certain trailer.
So that's why that's in that trailer. Thank you for the reminder, Becca. I forgot about that little nod that I put in there.
Well, obviously, Florida seems such like a fun sorry, state, I guess, not entire world, to kind
It
of
feels like sometimes.
yeah, sometimes to interpret. And it feels like such a fantastic basis for a sandbox. So, in your thought, what makes a good sandbox to play around in?
Ah, that's a good question. It's twofold. I say that a lot. ADHD go burr. There's never one simple answer. Um, Openness, but at the same time, a little bit of context. It needs to feel like its own. You kind of said it yourself. It needs to feel like a world. It has to
Yeah,
feel complete. It has to feel this is a real place. If I go somewhere and I interact with this thing, I get some kind of context. If I go inspect this water fountain and it's based off of the true to life radioactive water fountain in Florida, uh, I hope that I get some kind of response out of it, whether that
yeah,
spawns uranium or just tells me about the history of the Fountain of Youth there, doesn't matter. It has to feel fleshed out. And at the same time, it has to feel open ended. Like I can go in and do something and it does something different from what anyone else would have done. And it's just because I felt like doing that. And that allows for experimentation. It allows for combining items and seeing what they do. Um, and that comes from playtesting, being
yeah.
inspired by your own content as a developer and also seeing what players are inspired and want to do. Also, I'm going to grab my laptop charger. My apologies. If I disappear, that's what happens.
That's part of the joys of chaos.
Exactly. I
Trademark
should
pending.
not, right? I should not have relied on my laptop battery when I also realized I have Unity up and running right now.
That's been this entire showcase production for me of like, I don't feel like getting the charger upstairs. I could push Premiere another 10%.
Yep.
Usually doesn't end
Uh,
well.
no, it doesn't. I have moved to my laptop charger. Let me know if it's noisier. There's some fans in this other room.
Nah, you're good. You're good. Um, Not totally related to the game, but I do have to ask because this game is called Floridale Man. Do you have a favorite Florida Man story?
I love this question so much, you have no idea.
You're so
Uh,
welcome.
my favorite story will always be Florida man throws a alligator through a Wendy's drive-in.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
I love that.
right?
Oh my god.
No one was hurt. The gator was not hurt. This is important to note. But it kind of exemplifies a lot of what I think we're all fascinated by Florida men headlines and stories, where it's just, but why?
But but why?
It's weird. It doesn't really make sense, but they definitely thought, yep, this is the logical thing to do. And they were just carrying around a baby alligator in their passenger seat this entire time, just, as you do.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it, it just cracks me up every time.
If I may, because I have no chill. From Terry Spencer of the Florida Times Union, Joshua James, 24, was arrested Monday and charged with assault with a deadly weapon without intent to kill after Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation officials say he threw a 3.5-foot alligator through a Palm Beach County Wendy's drive-through window in October.
Poor Dave
He's also
Palm.
he's
Yep.
also charged with illegally possessing an alligator and petty theft. Jail records show that he was released on $6,000 bail Tuesday. He was ordered to have no contact with animals.
Period. I didn't know that follow up.
Yep. There you go.
All right.
2016, February 2016.
Oh my god.
God bless you, Joshua James.
Yeah, so that's
actually a woman's story.
Ooh.
It's Florida woman, and it's a woman was arrested because she was shaving while driving on the way to her boyfriend's house with her ex-boyfriend in the car, and he knew she was going to the boyfriend's house.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, she was just like leaning up, just like shaving her legs while she was driving.
I was gonna say up to that middle part, I was like, so some of my like aunts and cousins, I have definitely heard and seen them doing that. Wow. All right. Yep.
Yeah, on her way to her new boyfriend's house with her ex-boyfriend in the car. That's my favorite part.
It's the details that matter. That's the other part.
I love these creatures
never just
so
a
much.
Headline, right?
No,
it's a cryptid.
Need the
Florida men and women.
Florida Man is a cryptid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mothman, the Loveland frogs, Florida Man.
Yep.
Becca, would you like to ask our final loaded question?
Sure, I would love to.
Sure.
So we like to ask this to all of our devs at the end of our interviews. There's no right or wrong answer, so don't worry. The question is, what does indie mean to you?
This is such a good question. These are all very good questions, by the way.
Thank you. We put up a facade that we are professional.
Welcome to Game Dev.
Indies, baby.
Yeah. Oh, that almost makes me want to change my answer. I'm not changing my answer. I promise. This is what I was thinking initially. To me, indie is change. It's the ability and power to do something because, frankly, you think it's the right thing to do. You want to make a difference. You want to make a change. And if you were in AAA, maybe the stakeholders would go, what the hell is wrong with you? How are you doing that? No, we're not doing that. Or it takes too long. It's too slow. You can't implement this process. It's the ability to say, hey, we haven't seen a really, truly jank game that felt like Gmod since Gmod and Goat Simulator. What happened to that 2009 era of games? I miss that, and I want to make that. It's the ability to just act on what you think is right and what you want to see out in the world.
We were wrong. There is a right answer. That was it. Nailed it. Trick question. You won.
Perfect. Awesome. Glad to hear it. Wasn't a competition. All the answers are good, I bet.
Oh, yeah, they're all great. If anybody else is watching back. Chanzo, thank you so much for hanging out with us today and taking some time out of your, I'm sure, hectic, busy schedule, creating such a buck wild game. Please, where can people find you? Find the studio? Plug away.
Yes. People can find our studio at moldbreaker.com. Quick note is Moldbreaker with a U because moldbreaker.com without was $2,000. No, thank you. Indie life, baby. Please take a look and wishlist our game on Steam. It is Floridale Man, The Joy of Chaos. What's the deal with timing for other things here?
It's currently live on Kickstarter. You could go support it on Kickstarter.
Not live at time of recording, so I was not sure. Yes, please search it up on Kickstarter. I'm sure links will be provided somewhere.
They will.
Everything helps, gets it out there. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank both of you for inviting us and having me on to talk. It's really fun.
Oh my God. Yeah, of course. I'm so glad that in my doom scrolling on the hellscape that is Twitter nowadays, that y'all came across my timeline randomly. And I'm assuming Catherine runs the Twitter account. Yep. So I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I was a cliche reply guy. I was like, hey, you guys should maybe apply to this show. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's such a delight to get to know you guys. And the game is just such a delight. Even like I haven't gotten a chance to go hands on with it yet, but even just like trailers, vibe, everything. You guys are hitting all the right notes. So no, I appreciate you guys. Yeah, appreciate you guys being a part of it.
So happy to hear that. And when you do get a chance to try it out, please send. You got our info. Send us all your thoughts, all your notes. Becca, especially. I want all the Floridians to give me thoughts.
Awesome. So everyone watching, all the links Trento mentioned, you go to sixoneindie.com/showcase. All the links are there, especially the Steam link and especially the Kickstarter link. Throw these people your money, please. And of course, we haven't mentioned it in a lot of the interviews yet because it literally just got confirmed yesterday. You could check out Florida Man also on Floridale Man. Jesus, how many times have you done that by accident?
Oh, too many times, including in
Okay.
other interviews. It's been a pain.
Floridale Man can also be found on the 61 Indie Showcase Steam event. If you go to bit.ly/61steam, you can find the Steam page there where you can go wishlist, follow, and throw Trento and crew all of your love and good vibes. And again, Kickstarter money, because that helps a lot. Trento, thank you. Send our love to the team. Pleasure. And everyone watching, we did like 25 of these, so I'm sure this is not your final one. Go watch the other ones. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.